Groundhog Day begins with a man who thinks he understands the world. Phil Connors is a television weatherman in Pittsburgh, and he carries himself like someone forced to live among people who are much less intelligent than he is. He is sarcastic, impatient, and convinced that his own irritation is a sign of superiority. Then one routine assignment sends him to a small town in Pennsylvania, and before he can escape, time itself turns against him. The same day begins repeating over and over, stripping away every excuse, every shortcut, and every mask until the only way forward is to become someone better. Phil travels to Punxsutawney with his producer Rita Hanson and cameraman Larry to cover the annual Groundhog Day festival. He hates the assignment immediately. He has done it before, considers the town beneath him, and treats the tradition like a joke. While Rita is curious and warm toward the people they meet, Phil acts like every cheerful face in town is a personal insult. He wants to do the live segment, get back on the road, and return to the version of his life where he is always moving and never accountable for much. The morning of the festival, the town gathers around the famous Groundhog, also named Phil, to hear whether winter will continue. Human Phil does his report with fake enthusiasm and real contempt. He mocks the ritual, rolls his eyes at the crowd, and makes it obvious that he thinks the whole event is ridiculous. Afterward, he tries to leave with Rita and Larry, but a snowstorm forces the roads to close. Against his will, he has to spend one more night in Punxsutawney. That alone would be annoying enough for him, but the next morning something impossible happens. He wakes up to the same song on the radio, the same cheerful voices from the bed and breakfast owners downstairs, and the same date on the calendar. At first it feels like a strange coincidence, then every detail repeats. The same man speaks to him in the street, the same people drop a tray in the diner, the same festival unfolds exactly as it did before. Phil thinks he is losing his mind, but no matter how hard he tries to explain it, nobody else sees anything unusual. For everyone around him, it is the first time the day has happened. For him, it is the second. Then it happens again. And again. Phil is trapped in a time loop, reliving Groundhog Day in Punxsutawney with no clue why it is happening or how to stop it. At first he responds the way most people probably would. He tests the rules. He changes small details. He tries to predict conversations. He looks for cracks in the pattern, but the most important discovery comes quickly. Nothing he does has permanent consequences. Every morning resets. Injuries disappear. Money returns to where it was. People forget everything. It is one day with no tomorrow. That realization awakens the worst parts of him first. If nothing matters, then why not indulge every impulse? Phil starts using his knowledge of the repeating day to get whatever he wants. He steals money with perfect timing. He eats like there will never be a price to pay. He manipulates people by learning their habits and secrets. Most importantly, he becomes obsessed with using the loop to seduce Rita. Rita is everything Phil is not at the start of the film. She is kind without being naive, intelligent without being cynical, and open to wonder without becoming foolish. She likes people, she listens, she pays attention to what matters in ways Phil never has. The more time he spends around her, the more he wants her, but at first he wants her in the same selfish way he wants everything else. He treats her like one more problem to solve. So Phil begins collecting information. He memorizes her favorite drink, her college major, her ideas about poetry, her hopes, her dislikes, and every small thing she reveals over repeated conversations. Then he builds perfect evenings out of stolen knowledge, trying to create the exact version of himself that will make her fall for him. Sometimes he gets farther than before. Sometimes she is amused, sometimes intrigued, sometimes impressed, but every attempt collapses. No matter how carefully he performs sincerity, Rita eventually senses something false in him. By the end of each attempt, she pulls away or slaps him or simply sees through the act. Phil can copy the shape of intimacy, but not its soul. That repeated failure matters because it shows him the limit of manipulation. He can fake charm, fake compatibility, even fake vulnerability for a while, but he cannot force real connection by turning another person into a target. The loop keeps going and Phil starts breaking under the weight of it. What began as freedom curdles into emptiness. He has already eaten everything, stolen everything, mocked everything, and tested everything. Punxsutawney becomes a prison made out of repetition. Every smile in town, every line of conversation, every song on the radio turns into torture. He is the only person who can remember yesterday, and because yesterday is identical to today, memory becomes a burden rather than a gift. Eventually, he slides into despair. Phil tries explaining the situation to Rita and gets farther with her than with anyone else because she is willing to listen. One night, he predicts the whole evening in front of her, nomming details before they happen and describing people before they appear. Rita cannot explain it, but she cannot deny that something extraordinary is happening. For a brief moment, she sees how alone he is. Yet even that understanding does not save him because the loop still resets the next morning. So Phil decides that if tomorrow never comes, death might at least end the boredom. He starts trying to kill himself in different ways. He drives off a cliff with the groundhog beside him, he jumps, he electrocutes himself. Every method leads to the same result. Morning comes, the radio starts playing, and he wakes up in the same bed. Death offers no escape, even oblivion refuses him. This is the darkest section of the film, because Phil is forced to confront a nightmare stranger than death. He cannot end his life and he cannot move it forward. Rita stays with him through one of these breakdowns, and their conversation becomes one of the first truly honest moments between them. He tells her what it feels like to wake up in the same day again and again, to know everything and still be unable to change the one thing that matters. She comforts him, and for one night he feels less alone. But morning erases her memory, and he has to begin again. That is when the movie shifts in a deeper way. Phil slowly stops asking how to escape the loop and starts asking what he can do with it. If the day is going to repeat, then maybe repetition can be used for something other than appetite and despair. He begins learning not to impress people, but because time has become endless. He studies piano, he reads poetry. He learns ice sculpting, he practices French, he discovers the hidden rhythms of the town and starts using his knowledge to help instead of exploit. He catches a boy who falls from a tree every afternoon. He changes a tire for elderly women. He performs the Heimlich maneuver in a restaurant when a man begins choking. He saves people in small, exact ways that nobody else notices as miraculous because for them it is happening only once. These actions do not come from sudden sainthood. They come from long exposure to consequence without reward. Phil cannot earn status from these acts because nobody remembers them. He cannot build a reputation because the day resets. He can only choose the kind of person he wants to be while no permanent audience is watching. That is what makes his transformation meaningful. He becomes decent when there is nothing practical to gain from decency. He still loves Rita, but that love is no longer about possession. As he changes, he begins to understand her more truthfully. Rita is drawn to generosity, humor, and real attention. She is not impressed by performance as much as by character. So Phil stops trying to game her. Instead, he starts becoming the man he was pretending to be before. He learns to play piano beautifully because he actually put in the time. He reads because he wants to understand the world more deeply. He helps people because he has noticed them. The day arrives when his connection with Rita begins feeling real. They spend time together at the festival and around town, and this time Phil is not steering her through a script. He is simply present. He recites poetry not as a trick, but because it now means something. He plays music with ease. He greets the townspeople warmly because he genuinely knows them now. For Rita, the difference is unmistakable. This Phil is still witty and sharp, but the cruelty has burned out of him and something gentler has taken its place. That evening at the town dance, Phil becomes the center of the room without chasing attention. He dances, plays piano, helps people, and moves through the celebration like someone fully alive inside it. The townspeople adore him not because he forced their admiration, but because he has quietly become useful, kind, and joyful. Rita watches all of this and falls for him almost without realizing it. Later, at the charity bachelor auction, Rita uses all the money in her purse to win the chance to spend the evening with him. The choice is funny and romantic, but it also reveals how fully the balance has changed. At the start of the story, Phil chased Rita like a prize. Now Rita chooses him because she sees something rare and good in him. They go back to his room, and for the first time nothing between them feels manufactured. They talk, laugh, and grow quiet together. Phil does not press or posture, he simply stays in the moment. Rita falls asleep beside him, and Phil watches her with a kind of gratitude that feels very different from the restless hunger he carried earlier in the film. He has finally found peace inside the day instead of trying to outsmart it. Then morning comes. The radio starts again, but this time something is different. Rita is still there. The date has changed. It is February 3rd. The loop is over. Phil looks outside in amazement and realizes the impossible has happened. He does not get a grand explanation. The answer is in the life he built inside repetition. He escaped not by cracking some external code, but by becoming someone capable of deserving tomorrow. He and Rita go outside into a new morning, and even the town he once hated now looks beautiful to him. The streets are ordinary, but now ordinary means precious because it can continue. The future exists again. Punxsutawney, which began as a prison, has become the place where he learned how to be human. Groundhog Day works because it uses fantasy to tell an intensely human truth. Most people do not get infinite chances inside one day, but many people do repeat the same emotional patterns over and over, blaming the world while refusing to change themselves. Phil begins the story as a man who thinks life is beneath him. He ends it as someone who has learned to see life closely enough to love it. The brilliance of the movie is that Phil does not become perfect. He does not turn into a saint or lose his sense of humor. He simply becomes real. He stops using people as mirrors for his ego and starts recognizing them as people with needs, fears, and dignity of their own. He learns that love cannot be hacked, that meaning cannot be stolen, and that a life only feels empty when you insist on standing at the center of it alone. So Groundhog Day ends with a man waking up to a future he thought he would never reach, beside a woman he finally learned how to love honestly, in a town he once despised and now wants to stay in. After endless repetition, what saves him is not luck, magic, or escape. It is the slow, hard work of becoming someone worth waking up as.